I was really satisfied. We called Jeff years and years ago, and he came out to the house and just explained the whole process. And at that time, it didn't make financial sense for us. But a couple years later, when I saw the price of panels really coming down, we called him again, and he was just prepared to take the time again. So he answered all my questions about things like roof geometry. The proposal for where to do the installation had a lot of east-facing panels, and my first thought was east-facing panels wouldn't generate as much as south-facing panels, but he could show me some numbers on that, and it's turned out to be correct. When I look back at over a couple of years of data, my east-facing panels generate maybe 70 or 80% of what my south-facing panels generate, and they generate power earlier in the morning. And since your payback is fastest when you're using the power that you generate rather than getting it out of the grid and putting it into the grid, that means that there are more days when the solar panels are working, when we turn the coffee on, when we turn the computers on, when we turn the lights on in the house in the winter. So that's really worked out well. As well, I had some questions about whether I needed to replace my roof first, and I think a lot of people would have just given you the answer you wanted to hear. And what Jeff told me to do instead was go talk to somebody who didn't have a vested interest in giving me the right answer. So he had me speak to a professional roofer. That roofer came out, let us know that our roof still had plenty of time left in it, and furthermore that when we put solar panels on, the panels would protect the roof, so the roof would last even longer. So I really respected that. Rather than just telling me what I wanted to hear, he had me go out to a professional, do the research, and make it work, and so we've been really happy. It went pretty smoothly, I think. Obviously they had to work around the weather a little bit. We had a little bit of crazy weather at the time. And then there was a bit of a supply thing, I think with where tariffs were going or imports or something, with when the panels could get delivered. But once we had them, it was really just a matter of a couple days, I think, getting I'm not going to remember all the technical terms, but there's some electrical work they had to do first, and then the panels came on. Probably the thing that actually took the longest was getting it certified afterwards by I think it's EPCOR that has to certify it, and then the provincial government giving us back our subsidy. That took a little bit of time, but it was a matter of weeks, it wasn't months. So yeah, I think it went really well. Gives me some bragging rights, which I don't use too often, but I love talking to my friends and neighbors about it, and it's been really inspiring to see other neighbors on the street saying, well, if Karen can do it, I can do it too. And so it's a couple of extra people who've installed that on their roof. It's led to some really good conversations with family members, and of course now solar panels have gotten to the point where they're so cheap that you can have that conversation almost separately from having the conversation about whether climate change is a real thing or not. So you can have a solar panel conversation with a family member who's maybe not totally bought in on the climate side. For me, one of the things I love about it is just knowing that when I'm using my dryer, when I'm using my dishwasher, when I'm using my fridge, I can time those things, particularly the dryer and the dishwasher. I can time those for when the sun is shining really well, quite often, not every time, but often. It's easy. I've also one of the women I inspired to put solar panels on her home, she was generating so much power in the summer. She said, well, how can I soak up some of that? So she's switched a lot of her driving from the car to an electric bike. And I went, hey, I can do that too. So now I've got an electric bike. I've only had it for a couple of months, but I'm using it for all my chores running around town. So meetings and groceries. I get that it doesn't work for everybody, but I've put on 300 kilometers of totally emissions-free transportation getting to and from meetings and doing groceries. So I really like that I'm doing that because I'm looking at the kids and the next generation, and I just love being able to do something, get it started. Well, if you're starting from the point of deciding which home to purchase or build, take advantage of that moment to optimize your roof geometry. So, I have friends on this street who have the same size of house as I do that faces the same way, but they have very little usable roof because they've got all kinds of gables everywhere, they've got chimneys everywhere. It wouldn't have cost any more, it might even have cost less to think about that before the house was built, to provide yourself some nice open slabs of roof that it would be easy to do those installations on. So that's one of the things I'd advise you to think about is your roof geometry. And then if you're asking yourself the payback question, a lot of people will try to guess what the future price of electricity is going to be and try to calculate that way. One of the things that became clear to me in that process is if you're somebody who has some money sitting in the bank, you don't know whether to put it in the market or not, it's sitting in the bank, it's earning 2% or 3%. no matter how bad you think the solar payback might be, it's better than what that money is earning sitting in the bank, because that's close to nothing. And you're not only saving that money, but you're giving yourself a little more reliance on electricity. So those kinds of things become really obvious. If you're really trying to optimize it, you should think about the whole house package. So obviously you should think about insulation, you should think about heat recovery out of hot water, all those kinds of things. But the solar piece is easy and just a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned. It's an easy first thing to do. There's going to be a lot of conversations about that for a long time. There's a lot of players, but one of the things that seems clear to me is that our demand for electricity is still increasing, and as we start shifting into things like electric cars or electric heating systems, all those other things that we're going to have to transition to a lower carbon version of what we do, every time we do that, we're increasing the demand for electricity. So I love the idea that individuals are contributing to that. It's not all being done by the big power corporations with some giant fields of solar panels someplace. We've got roofs, let's use them. I also think that we haven't got the big battery installed yet. We're just waiting for those prices to come down a little bit more. But you know, we went through the 2013 flood here. We didn't have power for several days, and I would love to be able to still have power when those kinds of things happen. Climate change tells us those kinds of things are going to happen more and more often. So being a little more self-reliant really appeals to me. And in our case, that means I can offer electrical charges to all my neighbors. You know, if you need your phone to keep going, if you need something to keep running during one of those kinds of difficult situations, we'd be able to do that. So I think it's a really important part of the VIX. I think it makes sense for resilience. I think it's getting cheaper every day. And if we're going to continue to demand electricity, why not produce our own?